In an industry stuffed with marketing bullshit, empty promises, and shiny suited liars, one woman's had enough. She knows what it's like to have the wrong clients, no money, and no time for fun. But she also knows how to fix it. And on the Business for Superheroes show, she promises to tell the down and dirty truth about business, sales, and running away with the circus. Here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the Business for Superheroes show. I'm Vicky Fraser, and this week I decided I would share an interview with you that I did some time ago, back in April, with Julian Northbrook, who is one of my book writing clients, and he has written a fantastic book called Master English Fast, An Uncommon Guide to Speaking Extraordinary English. He is an expert in English as a foreign language, and he wanted to interview me for his podcast, or for his YouTube channel, I think, basically for his clients and his followers. And so I did an interview with him. I talked all about why I write books, why I think business owners should write books, and I thought I would share that with you this week. So enjoy, and I will be back same time next week with Joe.
For my guys who don't know who you are, just give us the bird's eye view, the elevator pitch, as it were.
Well, I am Vicky Fraser, and I help business owners to tell their stories through the medium of books. So I am an author, I am a ghostwriter, and I am an author coach. How's that?
Concise. I can tell you've practiced that.
Yeah, so basically I take people right through from, oh my goodness, could I write a book? I don't think I could write a book. All the way from that first idea, all the way through to having a finished book in their hands. And I do it tiny beetle steps, I call them, step by step. So rather than trying to get people to kind of step off the couch and run a marathon, which is just impossible, I take them through the process, and I hopefully make it enjoyable as well, because writing is the most fun you can have by yourself.
It is. Several things went through my head then, but yes, I'll agree with you. Writing is the most fun you can have by yourself.
I stole that line from Terry Pratchett, by the way. It's not mine.
Oh, is it not? I didn't know that. But you could have claimed it as your own, and I would never have noticed.
Oh, I love Terry Pratchett too much to do that to him.
He is a legend, it has to be said. Yeah. And for my guys who don't already know this, Vicky is actually the person who helped me to get my book done, Master English Fast. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to start by running a marathon. And when did I start my book? 2014. And I think I went through probably about 3 books worth of writing, each time scrapping everything as soon as I'd started it, thinking, this isn't good enough. This isn't what I want to write about. This isn't what I should be doing. And it was your outline process that you did in your course that actually got me me actually into doing it. So baby steps, I guess. Start with working out what you want to say. And since I've written another full-length book and about 5 short ones. So
it's addictive, isn't it? It's
addictive. Once you start, it's like the Pringles adverts. Once you pop, you can't stop, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. What I want to talk about today is, well, being more fucking interesting. Because I know you do a lot of different things, and I think the main thing you're doing at the moment is the author work.
Yeah.
But the thing that I know you for best is just being a really fucking interesting person. Because you seem to be able to make quite boring stuff often. Give it a flair and make it, I don't know, shine. What's the word I'm looking for? I like your idea of a flamingo at a penguin party. Talk to us about that.
Well, I just think that everybody is interesting, and there are people out there who will say some people are just boring. I don't believe that, because everybody has a story somewhere in their past, in their life, that is a little bit fascinating, because everybody lives differently. It's like, we don't all live the same lives. We don't all do the same stuff. We don't all think the same way. We don't all feel the same way. And so if you can dig down into the human stories behind the most dull stuff, you'll pull out something interesting. So, for example, I was talking to someone the other day about, I wasn't talking to someone. I was listening to a podcast. I have conversations with podcasts.
I know the feeling.
I was listening to a podcast the other day about recycling and the recycling industry. And on the face of it, that's going to be a really boring subject. It's like, okay, recycling, it's something we have to do, blah, blah, blah. But actually, they were digging into the problem with recycling. And it's very America-centric, but the problem is global. And they were talking, and the stuff that I didn't realize, like we just send all our stuff to China. And I did not realize this. And China have finally decided they don't want all our crap, which is perfectly reasonable, really. But they dug into the human story behind it and how there are families, living in tiny little shacks in China, breathing in plastic fumes, dealing with all this dirty crap that the rest of the world sends to them. And that's their recycling industry, or it was. They're changing things because somebody made a documentary about it. And that's how you make things interesting. That's how you bring out, it's not about the thing, it's about the human stories behind it.
I like that. Enough that I'm going to write it down. It's not about the thing. It's about the story.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. It's the story behind I guess the emotions that go behind things, the what it means, the human condition, and everything that goes behind the things that we see on the surface that counts.
Yeah, because if you think about how stories are constructed, I like to use The Matrix as a good example of this because it's a great movie. But, people think The Matrix is about our robot overlords and it's about humanity being enslaved and all the rest of it. It's not. That's just the plot. The story is about Neo's awakening. He wakes up one day, thinks that there must be something more to it. And it's about his journey and how he changes. And then, he gets the girl in the end and all that. But it's about looking at the difference between him right at the beginning and him right at the end of the movie and how he changes throughout. That's what the movie's about. It's not about, the robot overlords is just incidental. We don't really, if that was all it was, we wouldn't care about it. And that's why the big blockbuster movies with all the explosions and things, if there's no story behind it, they're just crap. And you kind of watch it and you think, oh, that's 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back. But if you watch something like The Matrix, where it digs in a little bit deeper, and people might be thinking, but The Matrix was just explosions as well. It's not, because actually there's a lot they say a lot about the human condition. And, it's quite a philosophical movie, really, once you kind of dig into it. So that's what makes that interesting. And that's how stories work.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm thinking back. Have you seen the Transformers films?
No, I haven't.
And I think they're a perfect example of that. My son loves them because he's more into the big flashy effects. And wow, there's a giant transforming dinosaur turning into a truck,
which is frankly awesome.
That they're doing, which is pretty awesome. But the films are devoid of story. And they are really just special effect after special effect after special effect, and they are quite hard to get into because there's nothing that'll hook you,
yeah,
and keep you going for the long haul. It's just yeah.
You've got to care about something, and that's the key, I think, is like from the very start, you care about Neo's character because he's, struggling with this, there's something wrong with the world, I'm not quite sure what it is, and I know there must be something more to life. And I think everybody at some point has sat down and thought, there must be something more to life than just this. And so you can really relate with that. And I mean, The Matrix takes it a stage further and says that we're, all in a computer simulation. But, apparently there's good evidence to suggest that we might all be in a computer simulation, which I find horrifying. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, has anybody ever proved that we're not?
Well, that's not possible. Right, we're going to go down a wormhole.
I think we could talk about that for the next hour. Probably not the best use of your time, though. I liked what you just said. You've got to care about it. Yeah. When it comes to you and your business and yourself and putting yourself out there, what do you do, to get people to care about you?
I just tell stories about my life. And, again, I'm always surprised at how, because when you live your own life, it's fairly mundane and, you think it's nothing out of the ordinary because it's your life and you're living it every day. But I often have people telling me that, I just do a lot of stuff that other people don't. Like I'm a trapeze artist and I do pole dancing and stuff. And that's probably not that normal. And I run a business and I'm renovating a cottage and I accidentally own 3 sheep and, that kind of thing. So I suppose when I list them out, it is quite interesting. But I just tell those stories of my life. And the way I get people to pay attention to me business-wise is because I weave those stories into my marketing and I relate them back. So often my marketing emails or my marketing articles will be about, I wrote an article the other day about why writing an outline is like training a trapeze routine, because you can't just get onto a trapeze and start doing stuff without warming up, because if you do, you get injured, really quite badly injured, because it's quite a lot of load on your shoulders. And writing an article outline or a book outline is very much like warming up. You have to get the warm-up going first. You can't just start cold, because that way lies injury, maybe physical injury if you're writing with an actual pen, but certainly in the injury of frustration. So that's how I relate my life and the stories of my life to what I do for a living, and people seem to relate to that. So
brilliant. And I completely agree with what you said as well, by the way, because I've made both mistakes there. I've tried running without warming up properly and I hurt my knee, and I've tried writing books without working out what I'm going to write about first, and that doesn't work either. I think one of the problems that a lot of people have is that they do believe that their lives are too mundane, too boring. What would be your advice to people who feel like that?
Yeah, first of all, it's really common, because one of my clients at the moment, I can't name him, but if you work in the marketing industry, you'll definitely know who he is. He's always saying to me, I don't know why people are so interested in me. And I'm like, dude, it's because you've lived the most incredible life. And, this is someone who genuinely, when his book comes out, you are going to read it and be like, holy shit, the life that he's lived. He's genuinely lived a really interesting life, much more large than most people, I would say. And he still thinks that he still struggles to figure out why people are interested in him, because it's his life and it's normal. So if you're thinking my life isn't that interesting, I would say A, that's not true, almost certainly not true, and B, you're not thinking about it from the right point of view, because quite often people are most interested not in, yes, you'll get attention with the outlandish stories about trapezes and, pole dancing and all the rest of it. But what people really relate to and really enjoy is the stuff that makes them feel like they're on a level with you, makes them feel relatable to you. So I will kind of relate my struggles with learning a trapeze routine to my marketing struggles. And, a lot of online gurus, I hate that word, for, marketing leaders and all that kind of thing, they don't talk about that. They paint this picture of themselves as being perfect, and they never struggle with anything, and they're on the top of their tree, and they don't talk about all of the iceberg stuff that goes under the water, because they've all struggled to get there, and they probably struggle every day with stuff. And some people do talk about it, like Richard Branson's great. If you read his stuff, he'll talk about the stuff that he struggles with every day. And other people do as well. But a lot of people out there, they just don't talk about that struggle, and so it becomes boring after a while. When we've all got friends on Facebook and Instagram, and they've just got these perfect lives, and you think something's not, your life isn't quite that perfect, and then you find out they're getting divorced. It's like, there you go. And so they kind of put this surface gloss on everything, but you don't see what's really going on underneath. And I'm not by any means saying share all your dirty laundry on public, because there's definitely an extreme to both, and you want to be somewhere in the middle. But share your struggles. If you think that people are not going to find you interesting, share your struggles as well as your triumphs, because that's what people will find most compelling. It's like, oh, okay, this person who is more successful than me, actually they struggle with stuff as well. And that's another thing that people say often. I had a question just the other day. I don't feel like I know enough to write a book, or I don't feel like I know enough to be the expert. And my answer to that is, well, as long as you're not positioning yourself as the all-knowing God of whatever industry, there are plenty of people who don't know anything like as much as you, who are right at the beginning of their journeys. And they're the ones who are going to be able to relate far more to you at this point in your journey than if you were like the Tony Robbins of your industry, because you're unreachable once you're up there.
Absolutely. We relate to people, don't we? We relate to the stories that they tell, because they're shared stories that we all have. We all struggle with things. And when you see these people on Instagram, and these people living these apparently perfect lives where nothing bad ever happens, and they never have a bad hair day, and they always look beautiful, and everything's always going really, really well, we just look at them and we just think, well, I couldn't do that. But the reality is neither can they.
No. And there's always that, I can't relate to them because they look perfect. But there's always that niggle in the back of your mind that says this isn't real, because nobody has that charmed life. And so that again will be a flag to people. It's like, if you try and present yourself as something that you're not, people will pick up on that. So it's really important to be real.
I think it was, I think I heard John say this first. Whether he got it from somebody else, I don't know, or not, I don't know. But I think he said something like, the problem with somebody who is always perfect and happy and smiling all the time is that you don't know when they're lying to you.
Yeah, I've heard him say that as well. And he's exactly right. Yeah, somebody who is nice to you, or not nice to you all the time, but yeah, somebody who who is always bright and shiny all the time. It's like, well, you know it's not possible for somebody to be happy all the happiness. And we're sold this lie that, you should be aiming to be happy all the time, but humans are not meant to be. You can't be, No.
I'm certainly not.
No.
I'm like a moody teenager sometimes. I'm like a roller coaster going up and down. It's terrible. Something you said a moment ago reminded me of when I first met you actually in Cleveland. Because I was familiar with your work even before then. But I went to Cleveland kind of thinking, I'm too shit for this. I'm not good enough to be here, like talking to Dan Kennedy and John McCulloch and all these other high elite business owners doing all these amazing things. I'm too shit for this. Should I really go? But then when I got there, I realized that everybody else was saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah. It's
common, isn't it?
It's really common, yeah. Imposter syndrome, and everybody suffers from it. And, when I went to Cleveland and met Dan Kennedy, which was awesome. And, he's a really interesting guy. And, it's like you say, I'm in this room full of elite business owners. I had to borrow money to go on that trip. And I'm really glad I did, because it was a really good investment. And that's the kind of, so it's like not everybody would admit that. I might not have said it at the time, but I can quite happily say now I had to borrow money to go on that trip, and it was a really good investment. And so, yeah, not everybody is, they put on the face, but there's not always the substance behind it.
Cool. And I think that's important, especially for my guys. And I'm just going to put a language learning, English learning spin on this. But a lot of my guys, obviously, they're speaking English as a second language. So they tend to go into situations, and this is really common with my clients. They tend to go into situations, whether they're social situations with so-called native English speakers, or business situations, meetings, presentations, academic conferences, whatever they are. But they kind of go in there feeling like they're already at a disadvantage because they don't speak English perfectly. Therefore, who are they to compete with native speakers who are speaking English perfectly? But again, it's like they're looking at things through this lens that glosses over all of the bad stuff and the reality that even native speakers are terrified of standing up on stage and talking about things. And
yeah. I love that you said that, because I always find this really interesting that non-native speakers get so nervous about speaking to native speakers. I understand it, but we as native English speakers, certainly me, I'm always like in awe of people who have learned a foreign language to the point that they can have a conversation with me and I can understand them and they can understand me. That's amazing. I don't even notice, and I don't even notice that somebody isn't speaking perfectly unless the language is so strong that I like physically struggle to understand it. It's like, I'm just in awe of the fact that you've even learned English at all, because English people don't bloody learn other languages. It's terrible. We're terrible for that. Because, so I don't know if this is going to help your guys, but by all means keep striving to speak better and better English. But know this: most of us are not judging you; we're in awe of you.
Absolutely not. And it's exactly as you said. And this is a common topic that comes up all the time. People actually just don't notice it. On the contrary, they're thinking, "Wow, shit! This person's speaking a second language and doing these things that I'm struggling to do."
Yeah. And we really appreciate the fact that you've gone to the trouble to learn our language as well. Well, I certainly do. I'm probably not speaking for the whole of Brexit bloody Britain here, but I really appreciate the fact that people have learned another language and are, speaking it to me.
The advice that I always give to people on this, and this is now kind of leading back into what we're talking about here, is that just because a native speaker who speaks a language as their first language, that actually doesn't mean they are necessarily good at using their language, at putting themselves out there, making people care about what they do and what they stand for. Yeah,
it's true. Some native speakers are not even good at making themselves understood. They can't form that coherent. It's not just about speaking the language. It's about creating the coherent thought and message and then putting it into words, which is surprisingly difficult if you've got a message to put across, even in a native language.
It is, and it is difficult, and it's something that I struggle with. I mean, when it comes to writing my daily emails or naming stuff, it can be hard to communicate things in the way that you want it to be communicated.
Yes.
Talk to me about charisma. you are one of the most charismatic people that I know. And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I know that you've done a podcast episode about this, and I will link to that along with this interview.
Yeah, talk to you about charisma. First of all, thank you. I don't think of myself as charismatic at all, so that's thrown me off a little bit. I don't know. You know what? I think the secret to charisma is being interested in people, like being genuinely interested in people and listening to them when they talk. So often when you have a conversation with somebody and they'll say, "How are you?" and they don't really want to know. It's just a thing that they throw out of their faces, and it's like, "Oh, how are you?" And it's really interesting. Next time somebody does this, actually answer their question, and you'll see if they actually meant it or not. So actually, I'm having a bit of a shit day, and this is why. And you can see them kind of go, "Oh." But charisma, I think, is being genuinely interested in people, actually wanting answers to the questions that you ask, and really listening as well. If making someone feel like they are the most important person in your world right at that moment is an incredibly powerful thing to do, and it's also a really fascinating thing to do, because when you start really listening to people's stories, you learn a lot. Like, part of the reason that I think I'm good at what I do is because I collect people's stories and I listen, and I genuinely listen as well. I'm not just waiting for my turn to speak. Most of the time, I mean, sometimes we'll do that sometimes, but most of the time I genuinely want to know. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother asking the question. So for me, charisma boils down to ask questions, be genuinely interested, listen, and make people feel like they're the most important person in your world for that moment. Don't be looking over their shoulder while they're talking. Don't make them think that your attention is wandering. Tell interesting stories if people are wanting to hear them, but make it all about the other person.
Brilliant. And yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I don't go as often as I should, because I hate going to them, but I have to go to academic conferences, and they're all about the networking. Well, let's be perfectly honest. I mean, nobody really goes to see the presentations. It's about the time in the bar afterwards, and everybody's trying to meet the people who can help them with their career. And it can be the most painful, frustrating experience in the world, especially if you're somebody like me, a nobody in my industry, although I've published some papers in good journals. I mean, I'm not like a famous industry person in my field. And you're talking to people, and it's almost like the second they realize that you're not like this famous person who can like help them with their career, you can see they're looking over their shoulder and looking around, like, who can I speak to next? And I don't know, maybe I'm just a boring person, but it makes it a very painful experience.
It is, and that's one of the reasons why I really avoid networking, because I think actually the next time I go networking, I think I'm going to call people out on that, and I'm going to be, "Oh, is there something more interesting over there? Do you want to go and talk to that person?" Because it's rude.
It is incredibly rude, isn't it? And you should. I think you should call people out. If nothing else, you'll get a name for yourself, and you'll be remembered.
I'm probably never going to go networking again. So.
What you've just talked about as well reminds me of something. I don't think I've ever told you this before. Certainly some of my guys will have heard me talk about this before, but my step grandfather, this is my mum's husband's father. Sadly, he's passed away now, but he grew up in Jersey during the German occupation.
Wow.
And he had the most incredible stories to tell about his time there, because he was a teenager at the time, a typical horny teenage boy. And he was telling us over dinner one time about how he used to jump over the wall like after curfew and sneak past like German guards carrying guns to sneak around behind the cinema to meet his girlfriend, who was also doing the same thing. We were sitting there over dinner, and he's telling us these stories like that. So amazing. Like, they give you goosebumps. They're that good. And my stepfather and his sister, who was also there, look at each other and they said, "Dad, we've never heard you talk about any of this before. Why have you never told us these stories?" And he said, can you guess what he said?
Didn't think you'd be interested? Exactly.
Didn't think you'd be interested. You never seemed to care. You never seemed to be interested. So I just never bothered. And they're just looking at each other and just like, shit, like, our father used to do stuff like this. And I'm sitting there just like pouring more wine, tell me more, keep talking, wishing I had a recorder so I could record all this and turn it into like a memoir or something. And they'd never heard it, simply because you never thought they'd be interested.
Yeah. And that's such a good lesson that, there are so many stories. The best stories aren't always about, the conquering of Mount Everest, and the obviously the D-Day landings and the going over the top. They're all great and wonderful things, and they're wonderful stories to tell. But I think often the most fascinating stories are the ones that happen in the background to ordinary people, because they're the ones that we can relate to. You can't all be General Bloody Custer, and you can't all be, not everybody is going to be the person at the top of the tree and in charge of the war, because there's, you can only be one or two people at the top. So all of those everyday lives, like your granddad's stories of sneaking out past German guns, that's awesome. And, everybody can relate to that, because even if we're not in occupied Germany, we've all been teenagers and we've all at some point snuck away from our parents or done something that we're not supposed to have done. So that everybody can relate to that.
We certainly have. Jumping out climbing out the window to get away in the evening. I've never done that before. Just out of curiosity, and if you don't, that's fine. Do you, when you work with clients and you're helping them with your book coach program, I assume that's what you still call it, and they're saying this, I don't have any interesting stories to tell. I'm just a boring person. My life's far too mundane for that. Do you have a process, a way of drawing those stories out of them?
That's a really good question, actually. I wouldn't say I had a process, but I do just ask them about their lives. So, I'll ask them, what's the thing you're most proud of? What's the thing you're most ashamed of? What, is there anything that you regret? Is there anything that you would, if you could have your life again, is there anything that you would do differently? What's things like name 10 things you love? And that's always a great question to ask people, because I did this when I was talking at Dom's event a couple of weekends ago, and I got people to name, it's like name 10 things, and people are like, what do you mean? I said, well, I love cheese, I love daffodils, I love tiny sheep, but I also love sitting outside. I also love sitting outside and putting socks on in the wind. Because I know that sounds totally weird, but it's just a really nice sensation. It's like a hug for your feet. But that kind of question will draw out little details from people, and you're like, what's the story behind that? Is there anything that happened to you that means that for some reason you like putting on socks outside? There are plenty of stories behind that. It's like, why do I like daffodils? Why do I like tiny miniature sheep? And then it's like the story of how I ended up with my sheep. So yeah, I just ask people questions. I ask people the big questions, and I ask people the little questions, your favorite TV show is The Walking Dead. Oh, why is that? Oh, well, I've spent quite a long time putting together a zombie plan, because you never know. And then suddenly you get that bit of an insight into people's minds. And then you realize that the zombie plan actually influenced the house they've bought and, the garden they have. And it's that kind of subtle, those things are interesting, because when you can relate them to popular culture, you suddenly realize, you do have a story to tell, and there's all sorts of interesting things in the background there. And then you find out that, they were adopted, and they just found their adopted family, their natural family, and all sorts of things that people don't think are interesting, but then you start to draw those stories out of them.
Brilliant. And the reason I asked you that is because I'm not sure if you know this or not, but my wife, Mrs. Northbrook, has just started her own business, doing the Kondo Maddie decluttering kind of thing. Cool. She calls herself Kondo Maddie without the spiritual bullshit, which I think is great. But when we're going through this in the moment, she's like, I want to write a blog, I want to write a book, I want to write about myself, but I've got nothing to say. I've got nothing to say on this. It's just something that I'm good at. And I'm like,
but knowing what I know of the two of you, yeah. she's moved from Japan to a totally different culture. Right. Not just to a different culture, but to bloody rural Ireland.
Right. We've just relocated from Tokyo to rural Ireland with 3 kids in tow after eBay. Well, actually, it wasn't eBay. It was Yahoo auctioning more than 3/4 of our possessions over about 6 months. And I'm just like, you've got nothing to say on this? What do you mean? But I think it's like, can't see the wood for the trees, as they say. You get so close to things, don't you, that you stop realizing just how amazingly bizarre and fascinating and interesting these stories are.
Yeah, because when you're living it, it's not bizarre, because it's your life. And so you have to step outside and look at if you look at everybody else's life. Most people live, and this is not disparaging them at all, but most people live very normal lives. They do 9 to 5, they go to work, they get married, they have children, they retire. The people that do things slightly differently, or do those normal lives but have stuff in the background that's a little bit different, those stories are the things that really are going to stand out. And there are also going to be commonalities as well. So the commonalities for your wife are going to be, well, I've got this family, and she's got all of the same concerns that anybody else has who's got children and a husband. It's like, I want the best for my family, and all the rest of it. But she's just got this incredible story to go with it of massive cultural upheaval, and getting rid of all of your possessions, and how that's affected her and how it's affected you and the kids, and all of the stuff that she wants to do with it is fascinating.
Yeah, I've got to ask. I can't not ask anymore. Socks in the wind.
Well, it's just, so I camp a lot. Joe and I camp a lot. We love camping in tents, proper camping. Well, I say proper camping. I like my comfort, so we take a duvet and it's just lovely. But one of my favourite things is camping, even in the summer in the UK, can be a bit chilly in the evenings. It's not very often we get really warm evenings. And
a bit wet. Yeah.
They can be wet. And so quite often I'll go and have a shower before we go to bed, and then you're in like a little warm shower bubble, and it's just really nice after you get out of the shower and you've all dried, and you put on your socks and they're just warm and soft, and it's a little bit chilly. Or you might have, like, one of my other things might have been paddling in the sea, or swimming in a lake or something, and you come out and you dry off, and again it's like you're a little bit chilly, and so you put your socks on and it just feels like a cuddle for your feet. And and then people are, that story is like, oh, you go swimming in the lake, isn't that just scary and gross and cold? And so socks in the wind, it's just one of my little quirks. I like tactile stuff,
like a hug for your feet.
Like a hug.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. It is. It's satisfying, isn't it? Getting dressed after being out in the cold, in the rain. When I've come back from running and I've been rained on, hailed on, which has happened quite a few times since I moved here to Ireland. You come in and you get dried off, and you get dressed in something warm. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Hot shower as well if you've been out running in the winter mornings, because I go out first thing and I say run, I stagger down the road a little bit and then come back 20 minutes. But yeah, just a hot shower afterwards, and it's just that reward. It's like, oh, I feel really quite smug about the fact that I've been for a run and now I'm like warm and clean and dry.
Brilliant. I had a question that I was going to ask you, and it was an important one, and it has completely escaped me. So I'm going to keep playing for time whilst I try to remember that. How did you accidentally get 3 sheep?
Okay, so I was down visiting my friend Kenda, and she lives she rents a cottage on a farm, and the farmer, it was about this time last year actually, so they were lambing. There were lambs everywhere, and we were watching lambs being born. It was great. We went for a walk the next morning and met the farmer, and we were asking, oh, how's the lambing going? How's it going? It's like, oh, it's great. We've not lost any this year, and they're all good. And they picked up this little lamb and said, don't know what to do about this one though. He's got a wonky foot, and if I can't straighten it out, I'm going to have to knock him on the head. And I was like, no, give me the sheep. And so I took him home, called him Eric, took him home, and turned up with this lamb. And Joe was just like, what is going on? And I was going to keep him because I wasn't going to let him be murdered just because he had a wonky leg. And so we were like, well, what are we going to do now? We can't keep him on his own. Sheep are flock animals. It'd be really lonely. So I had to get another one. So I found another lamb that had been an orphan, and I took her, and I was bottle feeding both of them, and realized that I didn't have probably the extra. If I had my time over again, I would keep him, knowing what I know now, but I didn't feel like I could look after him well enough. So he went to a farm rescue charity, and is living a lovely life now. And then I had one lamb again. I was like, well, she can't be on her own, so I had to get another one as a friend. So Bronson turned up, and he's like a miniature breed. He's a Jacob Cross Wisant, so he's a little bit bigger than the miniature. But and then Tigger, who was the little girl that we had, she died. I was absolutely devastated. Bronson was absolutely devastated. We spent a couple of days just cuddling each other, and I needed friends for him. So I went back to where I got Bronson from, and they said, oh, we've caught these two. You'll have to choose between them. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. So I came home with both of them, which is how we ended up with 3 sheep.
Oh, as you do.
As you do. They're hilarious. They're so cute.
Yeah, I bet they are. You have chickens as well, don't you?
Yeah, 5 currently.
Yeah, I don't know whether sheep are the same as chickens or not, but you just reminded me of this. I used to live with these hippies out near Launceston in the middle of nowhere. When I was 16, left school, slept on their sofa. And they had all these chickens. And they used to come in through the cat flap, and we used to get up in the morning and they'd just be there, like sitting on the sofa in the living room and things. They were
That's amazing.
Farm animals, mate.
They've got a lot of personality. People think that they're just, because because people eat them. I'm a vegetarian, but you don't think about where your food comes from. And I'm, just to make everybody who eats animals feel really guilty. They have proper personalities, and like my little sheep are like little dogs. They jump up and they come when they're called, and they eat up my hand. The chickens are hilarious, like proper funny, and so they're funny creatures.
Okay, I remember what it was that I wanted to ask you about.
Yay!
One of the other things that I kind of know you for, and I think the reason why this is stuck in my mind so much is because I don't know if you remember, but several years ago when I was trying to come up with a name for my English group, Julian Northbrook's League of Extraordinary English Speakers, I was like, maybe it's a bit long, maybe it's not a good name. And one thing that you said to me was, it's okay to be long, just don't be boring.
Yes.
You seem to have a real knack for putting things into really interesting words and expressing quite simple ideas in fascinating ways. And I think the tagline for your new book, which I think is coming out in June, is that correct? How to stand out like a flamingo at a penguin party. How do you come up with these lines? Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay. That's actually not the book that's coming out in June. I'm gonna finish that book. But I started it, and then I changed the direction of my business, which was, focusing on books and publishing and things. So my book that's coming out in June is called How the Hell Do You Write a Book? which
is also a great title. How the hell do you come up with these titles?
I don't know. I just see, the thing is, I find it really easy to come up with stuff for other people. I find it horribly difficult to come up with stuff for myself.
That's interesting.
Really, yeah, I think because of the pressure, or because I'm too close to it. In the end, I did come up with those two myself, but it took me a lot of time. Honestly, I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I pay attention to what's going on around me. I listen to people, and I collect stuff. So every time I read an article that's interesting, might be about anything, nothing to do with my industry, but like, oh, that's a really good headline, or that's a really good title. Like, my bookshelf is full of books with great titles. They're not at all related to what I do, which is great because it means I'm less likely to plagiarize something in my own industry inadvertently. So just look outside your own field of interest, and you can come up with stuff by just thinking, oh, that's a really good book title. How can I adapt that for what's in my industry? As for the flamingo thing, it's like, well, I really like flamingos because they're ridiculous looking birds and they're bright pink. And Alice in Wonderland, they were used to play croquet, weren't they, in Alice in Wonderland? So I've always kind of had an affinity for flamingos. And I also really love penguins, and I loved that was the thing that got me, was like the contrast between the two birds that I really, really love. Like, penguins all look the same, but they're super cute. And flamingos just look, I mean, if you put a flamingo in a flock of flamingos, of course it's going to look the same as the other flamingos, but like, that was the thing, and that's kind of got what got me thinking.
Brilliant. And so it's about the diet, really, the things that you read, the input that you give yourself.
Yeah, just read as widely as possible, and listen to podcasts, listen to interviews, radio programs, watch TV, I get loads of my ideas from pop culture that I watch. So there's, I binge on Netflix, different series. I don't watch the news enough because I find it a little bit depressing, but I know that I could pay a bit more attention, and then, you can tie things into what's going on in current events as well. It's all about making associations, creativity is. I think people have this misconception that you're either creative or you're not, and that's not true. Everybody is creative. It's just that it's like a muscle, like any other. You have to use it, and the more you use it, the more creative you become. And for me, creativity is simply making associations between things that might not otherwise be associated.
Brilliant. This reminds me of when I was at university, when I was an art student back in the day. I mean, we're going back a long time now. Are you familiar with the photographer Wolfgang Tillmans?
I'm not.
Brilliant photographer. Check out his work. He was one of my favorite kind of artists back in the day. He had an exhibition at the Tate Gallery last year that was absolutely brilliant. And I was in London when it was on, so it was it was 2 years ago, a couple of years ago now. His ex-assistant came to my university to give a lecture on photography and being a journalistic photographer. And one of the questions that somebody asked him was, if I want to become a world-class photographer, what is the most important thing for me to do? And everybody's expecting him to say, oh, you've got to be taking photographs every day. You've got to, 10,000 photographs before you get a good one, all the typical kind of advice. But he said, honestly, be interested and do a lot of different things. He said, I watch a lot of films, I read a lot of books, I travel a lot, I do all kinds of different things completely unrelated to photography, but it all feeds the ideas that I have, and they all come from this rich kind of source of input that I give myself.
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant, and it stuck with me since. And when you just said, basically the same thing, it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, he sounds great. I'm going to look him up. But yeah, I mean, the same thing can be applied to, how can I become a good writer? Be interested in everything, because everything is interesting.
Be interested in everything. Everything is interesting. I like that. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to share with my people? Just chuck you on the spot there.
You can ask me about my new book.
Go on then. Tell me about your new book.
So my new book is all about, and this is going to surprise you with the title, like, How the Hell Do You Write a Book? It's all about how you write a book.
Is it?
It is. I know, right? I know. And yeah, so I wanted to write it because I wanted it to be an introduction for people who think that they might quite like to do it, but don't really believe that they can, or they should, or they've got time, or all of the usual objections that I get when people say, I couldn't possibly write a book because insert excuse here. And I wanted to smash all those excuses down, and also give people, get their heads in the right place and give them a framework for doing it themselves. I wanted to write a book that would allow people, if they were willing, to read it all the way through and use it as a step-by-step guide to, actually finishing and publishing their own book. Most people won't, I don't think, because I think it's difficult to read a book and then really take a lot of action from it. But what I would like people to do is read it and think, yeah, I could do this, and then, go further, take the next step. I've got courses, I do coaching and stuff like that as well. And I think most people really do struggle to write a book without some kind of a coach or, background. I mean, you said you struggled until you got hold of my course, which is very kind of you. But yeah, so I think most people do need a little bit more. There's a tiny percentage of people who will just take something and run with it, and that's fantastic. Most people need a bit more of a kick and a little bit of encouragement and hand holding. And that's what I'm hoping that my book will do for people. And also it's really the thing that I'm focusing on now. I just think books are amazing, and they are the repository of human wisdom, and I don't want people to. It's never been easier to write and publish your own book, which is fantastic, but it's also never been easier to write and publish your own book, which means that it's never been easier to write and publish a crap book. And I really don't want any more crap books to come out. I think it's possible to write and publish your own amazing book. So what I want to do with my book is get people to tell stories that matter. The only really good reason to write a book, I believe, is that you have got something to say and you can't not say it, and that it's going to change the world in some small way, because that's what books do. It's what the best books should do. And that's what I want my book to do for people, is think, oh yeah, I have got something important enough to write down, and it's going to help change people's lives.
Brilliant. I can see that I'm going to have to interview you again at some point on the topic of how the hell do you write a book? Perhaps when your book is coming out. Is it coming out in June?
I'm hoping to have the boxes. No, I'm not hoping to. That's a terrible qualifier. I'm going to have my books in my hand by the end of May. So yeah, it's going to be launched early June.
Brilliant. So I may well ask you to do another interview on that topic closer to the time. But at the risk of digressing slightly from the original topic we've been talking about, can anybody write a book?
I used to say yes. Anybody can write a book. And I suppose technically that's true. Anybody can write a book. There's nothing, if you can string a sentence together, you can write a book. Whether everybody should write a book is another thing. Because I think there's a lot of marketers out there who are like, oh, it's the next thing to do on your list, and it's the next tick box, and it's a glorified business card. That annoys me, because books are more important than that. So if people really have, like I say, if you've got something super important to say and you really think that what you have to say can change somebody's life for the better, absolutely write a book. Anybody is capable of it, and you don't have to sit down and type it and write it in words. If that's not something that comes naturally to you, then speak it. Speak your book. You might already have a load of articles and things that you could put together and edit. So yeah, anybody can write a book. Whether anybody should is a different question.
Is a different question. Fantastic. Because I know a lot of my guys who aren't all business owners. Some of them are, but a lot of them are working in international businesses and what have you. Just off the top of my head, I can think of a whole list of them who could easily write a book about the thing that they do. Whether it's ever occurred to them to do that or not, I don't know.
Probably not. I find for most people, it just doesn't occur to them that they could do that, because people still think of books as being these special things written by special people.
Right. And I used to. And I mean, that's possibly one of the reasons why it took me so long to really actually get my book done, because I kept thinking, well, who am I to write a book?
Yeah.
I'm too shit for that. I'm not good enough to write a book, but
you were, and you did.
Cool. Where can people find more out about you if they want to?
Oh dear, my website is a total shit show at the moment, but hopefully by the time this goes to people, VickyFraser.com is probably the best place. You can sign up for my daily emails there, keep you updated on my book. I also publish regular blog posts, so VickyFraser.com/blog. And I publish regular articles on Medium.com, and you can find me by searching for me there. I also hang around on Instagram. If you want to see videos of me doing trapeze and videos of my sheep, then Instagram is a good place for that. I'm at TreeFrogToe.
Wait, I'm going to have to write that down because I won't remember it. TreeFrogToe.
Yeah. I know, I'm breaking all the rules of like social media. I should have all of my handles be the same and all the rest of it. And it's like, oh, oops. So yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Brilliant.
Like what you've just heard? Tell your colleagues, tell your friends, send them to www.businessforsuperheroes.com/podcast.